Spider-Man Homecoming is in theaters, and if you've seen it, and judging by the box office, you probably have, you probably want to talk all the spoilers that the movie dropped. That's what we're doing right here on Screen Junkies News. This is your Spider-Man Homecoming spoiler review.
Listen, Peter, there are people who handle this sort of thing. Can't you just be a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man?
Hello there, I'm Dan Murrell.
And I'm Roth Cornett.
And this is the spoiler review for Spider-Man Homecoming. So let's put up the spoiler alert graphic because we are going to go into everything that we couldn't talk about in our regular review. And this was a movie that had a lot of reveals, a lot of references to the Spider-Man lore that we can go into, some post-credit stuff that were setting up things for future Spider-Man movies, some surprise appearances. Roth, where do we even start?
I don't know. Well,
a lot going on in this movie.
I jotted some things down.
All right.
Because there were some things in our review, obviously talked about what we made of the movie in total, which was great. And you've seen it as well. Hopefully you liked it too. But one of the things that I did want to address is that we spoke about Donald Glover's character. So we weren't able to say how they were setting him up and who he was playing exactly. So let's get into now. He plays Aaron Davis, who is the uncle of Miles Morales. Now, he mentions his nephew in the movie, so he's winking a nod. Also, he becomes the villain, the Prowler, right?
Right.
So
I think we both said in our non-spoiler review, I think we both said that we thought that this was kind of wasted Donald Glover. And there's been a little pushback. I've had some people tweet me just like, what do you mean? He's such an important character in the Spider-Man lore, and he said it is important for so many things in the future. And I get it. Like, I'm not deep into the Spider-Man lore, so just as a viewer, I didn't catch that reference.
Right.
I didn't know who that character was in the overall Spider-Man mythology, but I don't think that means it gets for me, it doesn't get a pass as to how they use him in the movie. Like, I get that he's an important character in Spider-Man lore. However, I don't think, for me, it really changes the fact that he didn't really have anything to do in this movie. He just seemed to play a very non-vital role. And for me, again, as a viewer that wasn't as versed in Spider-Man lore, for me to see an actor of that caliber come in for a few minutes and basically tell Spider-Man where to go. It was distracting to me.
I agree. The thing is that I think for fans, it is a fun deep cut, right? Because of course there was a huge campaign where everybody wanted him to play Miles Morales. And then when there was some speculation that may happen, obviously he's past the point in age-wise that he could do that at this point. He voiced Miles Morales. And so it's like a fun weekend nod. And they really, maybe, as we know, Sony's sort of going down a path, not sort of, but definitely going down a path where they keep trying to figure out how to use their villains in sort of a villain united universe. They keep doing that.
They love that idea. They will not drop that idea of a villain universe. Yes. A Spider-Man villain universe.
And they've set that up in a big way in this movie, and I think including with this character. Having said that, Donald Glover's such a good actor that you still want them to find a way to do that. If that's what you want to do, that's fine, but still properly utilize him in this film. Because otherwise the average audience goer, and even anybody, can walk out and feel sort of disappointed, like I didn't get enough out of him. And two is that they set up Black Cat, if you guys will remember, in Spider-Man 2. The Amazing Spider-Man 2. And Felicity Jones was similarly, they never went forward with it because they canceled that franchise. So to set things up that you don't really know are going to pay off, Felicity Jones was sort of wasted in that movie.
And that's kind of what drives me crazy is, and the MCU, apart from Sony too, everyone is guilty of this, but this idea of including a character in a movie as setup to establish them for a future movie. But them not really serving any purpose in the movie they're in, that drives me up the wall because to me, it just seems kind of lazy. It's like, hey, we want to introduce this character. We don't really know how. Let's just have him show up. The fans will get it. And if you don't get it, whatever, you'll find out in a few years. Like, that drives me nuts. It's like, surely somebody over there could have figured out a better way to incorporate him
in the script.
And this is a small point of a movie that we both, if you missed our review, we both liked this movie a lot and recommended it. But, that's what the spoiler reviews are for. And I think for us, a lot of what we couldn't go into were these things that were like, I'm not so sure about that. But for me, Donald Glover was definitely one of those things.
I agree. And again, loved the movie. Think you should go see it. Think it's a ton of fun. That was just one of those things that I was like, oh, that's too bad because I really, really love him as an actor and I hope to see more of him in the future is with that. Now let's talk about the Vulture reveal. right?
The third act reveal.
The third
yes.
act reveal and his connection to Liz. What did you make of that?
I actually liked that.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm a dummy, or maybe that was just kind of wrapped up in the movie, but I didn't see that coming. I legitimately, I think
It's
the movie
so funny because you keep inadvertently quoting Marvel movies where I don't know why. You're like, I get that reference. I didn't see that coming. It's Quicksilver.
Oh,
and Cap.
that's true. I didn't see it coming. I was watching the movie, and I'm sure this, if when I see it a second time, I might pick up on things. But that for me was where the movie, I was kind of losing the track of the movie a little bit, because this was after the ferry sequence, which was after another big Washington DC sequence, and for me, like, it was getting to, like, we were stuck in this Act 2 thing of like, okay, I was kind of starting to wonder, like, okay, where is this going? I liked what I'd seen before, but I was starting to lose it. And then when they reveal Michael Keaton is the father, all of a sudden I'm like, okay, that is an interesting new wrinkle. And now I'm invested in the story of this movie, not the action. Now I'm wrapped back up in the story of this movie. Like, okay, this is going to be interesting. How does Peter navigate this?
Yeah.
And it added some of that some stakes to what had been between them, an adversarial thing. But it was like, but why is Spider-Man really fighting this guy other than the fact that he's bad? So I thought that's what the movie needed. It kind of kicked it into that third act and gave it a new fold. And it really attached me for the ending of that movie more than I was drifting toward the middle. I'm just like, okay, I've seen a lot of Spider-Man action sequences over the year. What else have you got for me?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I thought this movie did very well was actually playing with that and playing with those tropes and adding things to it. So what I liked, and I want to explain another thing, Miss Marvel quotes on the brain. I liked Keaton.
Yeah.
I liked the Vulture. I liked the idea that he was appealing to Peter as sort of the everyman version, as much as a superhero can be the everyman version of an Avenger. When you're looking up at, and they do this obviously in the Netflix series, but as well, you're looking up at Stark Tower and at Tony and all his money and his pedigree and all of this that he has at his disposal. And then you've got Thor, who's an actual God, and Peter's like, I'm this kid from Queens. And I think that the Vulture was appealing to him, like, they don't care about us. And if they don't care about these people, you need to care.
And we talked in the non-spoiler review a little bit about how, I kind of wish they'd taken the Vulture a little farther as a villain. And I liked Keaton, but that for me was what I was referring to, was that in that warehouse toward the end there, when he's talking to Peter and he's actually saying, like, he's like, what are we even like, don't you understand? You're not like them. You're like me.
Yeah.
And, they come in, they do all these things and they don't care about us. They
take
ruin
off.
our
They don't
lives.
clean it up.
They don't care about us.
Yeah.
And it's like, look what they've done. And for me, that was like, I wished that dynamic had come into play earlier, because that was so near the end of the movie. And really the only thing left was the big climax at that point. That for me as the villain, I was like, oh, wow.
That's awesome.
Because I was listening to him, I was like, that's a great argument.
Yeah.
That's a really good argument.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I wish that had come into play a little bit earlier, because I thought that was a great dynamic that could have maybe been played with a little bit more throughout the movie.
I thought so too. And I will say this. So I think there was we weren't able to talk about these things. So it was like, it's not that I didn't love Michael Keaton. I love Michael Keaton. Right. I wanted more of that, because I thought how interesting look, the reveal was cool, and here's the bummer about this job. Yeah. Sometimes there was a rumor that he was Zendaya's father in the movie, and so I was already prepared for him to be somebody's father. Okay. And that's the unfortunate thing. Sometimes you hear these things, but I thought, wouldn't it be cool if that wasn't I don't know how to do this. I don't know if this is the right way, but I wanted that idea of him being an alternate mentor to Peter to play in earlier. I wanted the idea that he had this perspective that though he's a villain and Peter's never going to go with him, that he had this perspective about being on the ground and of the people that he could follow in that would alter with Tony's perspective and Tony trying to mentor him. There was something really rich about that I didn't think fully played out, but was so cool that it was there, because by the time he gets to the end of the movie, he's able to bridge that gap and still be an Avenger, or on his way to being an Avenger, but saying, for now, I'm going to be your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
I wonder if they were worried that it would be too reminiscent of Willem Dafoe in the first Spider-Man movie. It's, I was thinking that too. I'm like, it's cool for this movie, but I think maybe they were worried, we can't really double down on this too much, because previous Spider-Man movies have kind of played with this idea of, the villain is the father of my friend and what do I? So I wonder if they were just kind of like, okay, we're gonna do this, but we don't want to make it too key because it's gonna seem like it. That is a tightrope.
Yeah.
But I just like Crazy Eyes Michael Keaton.
He's
like,
so
threatening
awesome.
him with the knife, and that was so
That ride in the car was so delightful, and then you harken back to him seeing what was happening in DC, and you realize, he was watching his daughter, who is the only thing that he cares about, and why he's been doing this the whole time.
Yeah.
And I thought that was great.
Yeah.
Right. And I thought there was so much to that relationship. And look, it's a movie. They're dealing with multiple relationships. They're dealing with like Spider-Man has to have the relationship with his friends that they're setting up for future movies. He has to have the relationship with Tony. It's a lot to manage. I thought in total they did it well. But man, I always want more Michael Keaton. So that was that big reveal, which I agree with you in terms of personalizing the stakes did work.
It did. It definitely worked, and it's.
But it's tricky.
I see the dilemma there of just like we don't want to go too much into the dad thing, but for me, I also think, well, I don't know.
You kind of do.
It's tough. Yeah.
MJ.
Okay.
All right.
As I said in this non-spoiler review, I was not a fan of Zendaya's character, not her, but her character. I thought that she had one job in this movie, which was to just be disaffected and just like unimpressed by everything. And then the MJ reveal. Of course, there had been rumors that she was playing Mary Jane. She's not playing Mary Jane, but she's playing MJ. So I don't know. Again, this felt much more to me a reveal in service of something that's going to happen in the future versus something that actually took place in this movie. I didn't feel any relationship between them at all in this movie. They barely interact. They're in a few scenes together and they speak a few times, but as far as just like on a character level, they don't really, to me, interact at all in this movie. And that smacked of universe building and just like, okay, well, whatever, we're going to reveal this and just whatever, we're going to worry about it in another movie. And as I've established, that drives me bananas.
Yeah.
So I was not a big fan of that reveal for the simple fact of like, I just didn't feel any chemistry or connection between them in this movie. And so they're like, oh, I'm MJ. Like, ugh.
I guess. Yeah.
I rolled my eyes much like she did in every scene that she was in this movie.
I feel like with that one, it's tough because after the non-reveal reveal, right?
Right.
You're just sort of like, don't do this. Just say up front.
Everybody knew that she was playing
Everyone
MJ.
knew. And so it's like, just say up front what's happening. Then we don't have to deal with all the rigmarole. We don't have to try and make it a big mystery.
Yeah.
She's just MJ. And by the way, if she's MJ, make her MJ. Why is she Michelle, who's also MJ? And then Kevin Feige, in an interview about it, said, well, maybe they call her MJ, but she's not that MJ. And then why
That's
do
so
it?
dumb. Then why do it? Exactly.
Either make her Mary Jane.
Of course she's that MJ.
Of course she's that MJ. Either make her Mary Jane or don't. And here's my other thing. She's a very different Mary Jane.
Yeah.
Right? So at a certain point, my other concern is that this trope must and will happen where Zendaya, who is a shockingly beautiful young woman, is in the movie, will take down her ponytail and the whole world will suddenly realize they hadn't seen it all along. And in fact, she's all that.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like, come on, man. But you're going to they make a joke out of it in Wonder Woman because it's like you put spectacles on her and suddenly she's not that she didn't have glasses, but you make one little change and suddenly we can't see that she's gorgeous.
Right.
You know, I don't get it. I like Zendaya actually. And I sort of liked what they were playing with. I wish she had had more to do as well. And it's a very different take on that character. But the fact that they're not even committing to the idea that it is that character does concern me. Like, who is she then?
It's just, to me, it's just like trying to generate
Or she's an amalgam.
By being like, I don't know. What do you guys think? Like, no, we know who she is. Like, you don't have to play coy. Like, we get it.
Yeah.
Like, she's MJ, Mary Jane, whatever you want to call her.
Yeah.
We know what the purpose of her character now is clear.
Yeah.
And so let's just get into that. And
And perhaps she is an amalgam of the Michelle character and MJ, but at that point, I just wish they would commit and have it be what it is.
That was the biggest detractor for me with this movie is the amount of setup for future things that this movie had. This movie had a lot of just setup and wink, wink, and up, and it was almost too much. Personally, I just felt like, okay, let's focus on the movie we're in right now.
Yeah.
And let's worry about the next movie when it's time to worry about the next movie. And
yeah.
if you set up, and it's plus, it's like now they've set up, okay, they set up Donald Glover now, so they're obligated to pay that off in the next movie.
Maybe.
They set up MJ now, so they're obligated to pay that off in the next movie.
Maybe.
They set up the Scorpion now in the post-credit scene. Now we have the villain, the Scorpion, who's played by the great actor from Better Call Saul.
Yes.
He plays Nacho on Better Call Saul.
He plays Nacho on Better Call Saul.
Michael Mando, right?
Yeah, Michael Mando. By the way, everyone, if you don't watch Better, this is my mid-Spider-Man spoiler review. Appeal to you to watch Better Call Saul because it is truly one of the greatest shows on television. You didn't think that they could do it after Breaking Bad. You didn't think they could make a spinoff based on Saul Goodman that absolutely broke your heart every single week. And these are some of the richest characters that exist on television. These are complex characters. They're not good or bad. Nacho is one of my favorites. I'm very worried about him right now, and I love seeing him in this movie. So let's talk about that. At the end, they set up Scorpion.
He's got the Scorpion tattoo.
Yeah.
And then the end scene with Aunt May, did she discover? She seems to have discovered now that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. So it's like we now have 4 story beats that are now the next movie's either obligated to pay off or is going to have, or it's going to be confusing and frustrating if they drop them. And it's like, that's where you get in trouble for me, is when you're going through one movie and you're setting up multiple storylines now that are either going to be completely loose ends if you drop them, or now you already enter writing another movie, the next one, with all of this narrative business to do. And I think that's where you can get really crowded and clustered. And I think that's where these Spider-Man movies are going to have to be very careful. It's like, don't get too cute with the mythology.
Yeah.
Marvel, the MCU proper, and this is a hybrid, learned that lesson with Iron Man 2, I think, and Age of Ultron, of just like, if you try to do that, it's not going to be as focused
movie.
And tight as the movies that you've been delivering. And I think they've got to really be careful about that.
It's a really delicate balance when you are in these universes, and that's one of the tricky things. Even like Wonder Woman, sort of the bookends, I don't think were really necessary, except to remind you that Justice League is coming.
Right.
Before, it didn't detract from the movie, but for the movie, they weren't really necessary. And that is what gets really tricky about these films. And I think that what's even more complex about this film in particular is that Spider-Man and Sony are trying to set up different things.
Yeah.
And so the things that's Marvel, not Spider-Man, sorry, Marvel Studios and Sony. And so the things that Marvel Studios is setting up are kind of integrated into the plot with Avengers. Is he going to be an Avenger?
Pepper Potts comes back. We haven't seen Pepper Potts in many years. And
they're finally getting married.
Apparently. That's a pretty big step for the MCU.
Which have I been like tainted by The Walking Dead in the sense that anytime someone's suddenly going to be happy and married, they're going to die, that happiness is punishable by death. So now I immediately assume.
Now you're worried about RDJ.
Yeah, like he's definitely going to die in one of these next couple of films because he's getting married.
We've got Infinity War 1 and 2, which that's a whole other discussion. But we know that Spider-Man is going to be like, I think that's why they were so playing the Avengers angle in this movie, was we've got to get Spider-Man mixed up with the Avengers because it has to make sense for him to show up in Infinity War. But I agree, Marvel Studios is doing that. And Sony is doing,
setting up the villains.
We have a whole other Spideyverse that we are setting up that doesn't include Spider-Man, that we're also going to try to do on our end.
So, and in total, this it didn't detract from the movie for me. I still walked out of that movie really, really loving it and having a great time. But I will say that I did notice those things. I wonder how much audiences that are unaware noticed or not. Some of the setup, the benefit of that setup, and particularly setting up the villains, is that one of the moves that they made in this movie that I loved was that they did not kill the Vulture, which is the way this usually goes down. And they're like, oh, done with this villain, here comes the next. This villain, here comes the next. I mean, other than in, obviously, there's like the overall big arching bads. But I liked that. I liked that he wasn't dead at the end. It might be because they want to use Michael Keaton again in one of these villain movies.
It'd be dumb to not leave an
Six.
avenue open to bring Michael Keaton back for anything.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people I'm reading are just really, I think, on the strength of just his performance, are saying he's one of the better MCU villains. And I think that's what a lot of movies do, is they don't take into account if these villains are going to play well, and they discard them. Sometimes that's for the best, sometimes it's for the worst.
Well, we'll see. I mean, hopefully with RDJ, happiness is not, in fact, punishable by death.
We'll find out
but we will
years.
definitely find out in a few years. Let's talk about another thing that we both loved about the movie, which is the use of Cap. It was so great.
That is such this Captain America that we know, who, especially because you could tell by the uniform, this is probably pretty soon after he was thawed out.
Yes. Just defrosted.
I love how square Chris Evans is sometimes in his role, and he's just like, oh, put it on. You know, it's just like he's way behind the times, and that just seems like such a Captain America thing to do. It's just like, well, if my country decides that they want me, then I'll. And just the fact that everyone is so bored with it. Yeah, just they don't even. I loved Hannibal Buress's line. Like, I think this guy's a war criminal now, but whatever. Yeah. And then that tag, the final scene was one of my favorites because I think it was kind of an in joke of just. This is about patience, and sometimes this is all there is. And I don't know. I thought that was a great laugh, and it just goes to show you that maybe not every end scene has to be. They're kind of moving away from that.
I loved that too because it was sort of making fun of itself and us. And it paid off that through line. And I love the fact that he almost, even though it was just a joke, and that was one of my favorite moments in the movie too. Like, I think this guy's a war criminal now, but I don't know. It's because I grew up in New York, and that's like such a New York comment. Like, whatever, we're gonna still have Jim today.
And I still have this video from 4 years ago.
And I still have this video from
8 years ago.
We were working out the timeline today. So maybe 8. We're unclear. So yeah, it's from a number of years ago. And you're right. He's so behind the times that this is a thing that they would have done sort of like in his day, or actually a little past his day in like the 50s, like those educational videos. But the fact that he's doing them is amazing. So your body is changing. Right. Thought it was great, but he also kind of became the Greek chorus of the movie. Like, the things that he said did highlight what was going on. So I thought that was so well done, and a great way to also make fun of us as the audience. A little bit.
Just, I don't know. It's having my memories of school being that, like, they don't show you current videos. They show you videos from 10, 15, 20 years ago. So of course they're still going to be using old Captain America training videos, because why not? Yeah,
I felt like, is that a VHS that he's got too? What's going on? It wasn't, but there you go. In total, though, we wanted to hit all of the things that we couldn't talk about in our spoiler-free review, which is where we really talk about the character development and the humor, and how great and incredible Tom Holland is as this Spider-Man.
Really good Spider-Man. I think the first one that really does feel and act and look and talk
like both,
like a comic book, 15-year-old Spider-Man. And they wrote that character as a 15-year-old. I like the fact that he is intimidated by Michael Keaton. Because he may be Spider-Man, but he's also 15 years old. And Michael Keaton would intimidate me.
Oh my God,
so I think
15-year-old is real terrifying. Nice, though. Do you think he's probably super cuddly and fun in person?
Who?
Michael Keaton.
I don't know.
I
think it's one or the other. And man, you better not get it wrong.
That's true. If you could hug one celebrity, who would it be?
If I could hug one celebrity? Oh, I don't know.
Okay, we'll come back to you on that on our next spoiler review. Thank you, Dan, for indulging me on this Friday filled with coffee and my mid-Spider-Man review appeal to watch Better Call Saul, which I hope you do too.
I do. I love Better Call Saul very much.
Great
show.
So watch Spider-Man. We hope you already did if you watched this, because we just spoiled literally the entire movie.
Seen the movie.
Chat with us below and on Twitter about Spider-Man and about Saul if you like. Are you worried about Nacho? I am. I'm at Roth Cornett.
I am just Dan Merle. At Merle Dan. I'm not just an at name yet. I'm still evolving.
You're evolving?
Yeah, I'm evolving. So.
Yeah, eventually we're all going to evolve into one big at.
One big at name. Yeah.
That'll be the singularity. That's not what that means.
Yes. Oh, well. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned. We'll be here the rest of the summer. So many movies lined up. Valerian and Planet of the Apes, and so many more coming out. We'll be covering them all right here on Screen Junkies News. Thanks for watching Screen Junkies News. You can click, select, tap, whatever you want. The box is on screen to watch even more Screen Junkies News, and don't forget to click the logo to subscribe.